Hello and welcome to Paris. We're in London, but we're thinking Paris, and we're going to be talking Paris. And we're talking Paris at the very height of Paris, which is, of course, couture. And we're starting in a very interesting way with a couturier's name which few people know how to pronounce, and certainly would have been thought quite dead just a few years ago, but has been revived miraculously. And we'll tell you a little more about that now. But first of all, I want to say my name's Colin McDowell. I may or may not have said that. I'm going to ask my visitors, my guests to...
My name's Camilla Morton.
Say a little more.
Oh, all right.
They want to know who you are, my dear.
My name's Camilla Morton and I'm a fashion writer, and I also did a series of fairy tales, including one with Christian Lacroix.
Yeah.
My name is Judith Clark. I'm a curator and a professor at London College of Fashion.
My name is Pat Frost. I'm in charge of fashion at Christie's.
So, quite a high-powered little trio there. And we're all very excited about the fact that Schiaparelli was bought by Diego Della Valle, who of course is the man who owns Tod's and Roger Vivier and various other labels. And he's sort of sat on it a little while, and we've all been wondering, well, what is he going to do? And in fact, what he's done is he's started the repositioning, perhaps we could say, of Schiaparelli by giving the name to a very well-known and very much loved and exceedingly talented couturier called Christian Lacroix, of course, of whom you've all heard, to just give his little capsule collection of what he feels Schiaparelli is about now. And this is apparently going to be done for several collections until, I suspect, our very shrewd Mr. Diego Della Valle decides now is the moment to produce a particular designer. And we're all very interested in that, of course, and most of us have quite strong views as to who it should be. But before we plunge into the present and the future, Pat has very kindly brought an absolute treasure for us today, and we can truly say you saw it here first. This is an original Schiaparelli jacket, and it's a very well-known one. It's been drawn. It was drawn, I think, by Vertes or somebody like that.
There's an Irving Penn photograph.
The Irving Penn has photographed it for Diana Vreeland's exhibition, something
in the 74, I think.
Yes, long time ago. Marvellous book, that, all in black and white, fabulous book. And there it is. This, of course, is what she was all about. Elegance, understated, with that sudden boldness. Judith, would you like to say something about the embroidery?
Well, she had a famous collaboration with Les Age, of course, that dominated quite a period within her working life, didn't it? Yeah. And so it's a wonderful sort of example of that collaboration. I think often we sort of speak about her collaboration with artists, but of course the collaboration also was very much with craftsmen, and so I guess that's also what we're looking at today, is the craft of the garments as well as their bold design.
I think that, you know, we all know that Chanel was quite contrarian, not a particularly agreeable woman, but I think that Schiaparelli was a bit contrary as well. I think she looked at Chanel's oversimplification in her eyes and thought, let's give glamour. And also I think she was very affected by Hollywood. You could see Barbara Stanwyck or somebody in this, you know, in black and white. And I think it's just absolutely lovely. Tell us the story of it.
It's got a lovely story, in as much as we recently had a sale where we had the same model of this jacket, and afterwards we got a phone call from a lady who was really quite distraught, saying, I've got one of those. And of course you're used to taking phone calls where people say, I've got one of those, and it isn't at all. But it turned out that she really did have one of these, and that she'd been given it by her boyfriend, who bought it for her from a charity shop in the King's Road about 1972. And she had worn it to every party since then.
And looked fabulous.
And looked fabulous, and had loved it, and had only recently put it in the cupboard, in fact. So she was rather shocked to see another one of her jackets appearing. Shocked and frightened.
And thrilled as well.
Thrilled as well.
I hope she was thrilled, because it's a real fairy story.
It's a real find.
It's
a real find. It's the sort of find that all of us would just be delighted to have.
It's a real fairy story, and it fits in very well with Christian Lacroix, because you have done a book of a fairy story with Christian Lacroix with his marvellous drawings. So that's just a little sort of lead in
taster
to what we're going to see. You're not going to see what you normally see, i.e. it's not a moving show, it's not even a presentation. What it is an installation, and we are going to show you first of all Christian Lacroix's beautiful drawings, because one of the problems with the installation is it obviously looks very beautiful and very sophisticated and everything, but there's an awful lot of mirror which can help in some cases but not necessarily in all. So let's just look at them and talk about them as we go. Does this, for example, Pat, say Schiaparelli to you? Doesn't to me, I have to say, the proportions.
I suppose he's thinking of the sportswear, those sort of 1930s ski suits and siren suits that she used to do. I'd say it looks more like Schiaparelli in his drawing than it does in the flesh, as it were.
In the real thing.
But it's obviously not sportswear as much. It seems to be made of very rich fabrics.
Quite. It's evening wear.
Evening wear.
Camilla, what do you think about this?
Well, he's collaged in her Elsa's head there into the picture, so you can see that Elsa's wearing his outfit. I think it's quite interesting to have Christian Lacroix doing these 18 pieces for Schiaparelli, because I think what you were saying, touching on about how Diego Della Valle has got this brand, I think to do these collaborations, it's sort of like reawakening something and reopening people to who she was, because although she was, you know, the contemporary of Chanel, Chanel's brand continued and it was very much something that everybody could identify with, and this is re-educating people and reminding people of the signature, you know, the signatures of the house. And I think it's quite a clever way of sort of like pulling people back into the brand.
Yes. Judith, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the 30s more a Schiaparelli period than a Chanel period? Didn't she?
Yeah.
Sort of,
Yes.
She was bigger.
She was the racehorse that moved ahead.
Yeah.
I think so, and certainly towards the end of the 30s, I think. I mean, the famous circus collection is 1938, and so it comes on the back of the beginning of her famous collaboration with the Surrealist artists. And I think Vogue certainly paid a lot of attention to those collaborations because they were so photogenic, weren't they?
And particularly French Vogue.
Yes, yes.
There's lots of speculation as to where the new look came from, you know, whether it was Molyneux or whether it was, there's a particular play, The Barretts of Wimpole Street maybe, that was dressed, that he had a big effect upon him apparently. But I think Schiaparelli had quite a big effect upon him, in the colour and the drama in particular. This it's almost a pastiche of the 30s, isn't it? You could imagine Wallace Simpson in something like that.
But when you look at the people on the red carpet today, and you think back to the 30s, or you look at Wallace Simpson or you know, great sirens of the past, they could all take a leaf out of their books and up their game to that level.
Well, let's hope they will, now that we've got a new Schiaparelli.
Yeah. I mean, Christian said it was like too beautiful an opportunity to refuse. I mean, how could you?
Absolutely.
I like this one. I like that. I just love his drawings. I think they've got such character. They're totally seductive.
Yes, I agree.
And that
But
hood
we are
is
looking at the clothes, remember, Camilla?
I know.
Difficult to quite see what that is. Is it one huge poncho or is it a coat?
Called
or
the Scorpion.
Scorpion with its stings, yes. Next.
Imagine it's a rich, lush velvet, and that's the pom-pom.
And presumably a reference to the circus,
very definitely.
collection, though in a different
And the French pool.
way. And
there
there,
you go.
and there it is.
There it is.
Yes, it is.
There it is. So we've just seen the original.
The mirrors.
Yes.
But one does have to say, it is not as elegant as the original.
It's
As
resurfaced as a cape, hasn't it? I
Yes,
think?
but there's it's too, because it's gone big. It's brash to me. You know, and that's
Still pretty
although
good,
that's
though.
very rich. The beautiful,
Yeah.
the beautiful coat is very rich embroidery. It's not at all brash. And I think that's one of the things that has gone since the 40s, 50s, even the 60s to a degree. There's no place for understatement in couture anymore.
But I think it's the difficulty with quotation, isn't it? That you sort of feel you have to do something with it.
Bigger and better, yes.
And even if it's not bigger and better, it's something in terms of sort of almost ironizing it, or placing it in inverted commas or something. I think it's very tempting, isn't it, to always change its proportions.
And you want it to be photographed, and you may not be close up to somebody. That cape is going to glitter, catch the eye.
Oh,
so that's called shocking.
So that's
the shocking.
I guess we could have guessed that if we thought about it a bit.
And it's something they have in common, isn't it? That colour. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Christian's couture was never understated in any.
No, indeed not. In fact, this is very understated compared with his.
Yeah.
You know? In surface.
That's beautiful.
That's the bustle. Yes.
Yeah.
And that, I think she created a collection in 1939, which was predominantly with the bustles. And didn't she love her mother's wedding dress? That was Edwardian. And I think that's why it was dear to her.
Yeah, and the collaboration with Mae West as well, I think.
Yes,
doing those sort of Hollywood pompadour type can dress for her.
Yeah. But this is the collection that people say influenced Christian Dior with the new look. Whether true or not, one doesn't know. That's got a lovely 40s siren suit, turban, because you're going to work in a factory or something. It's got that lovely look about it. But in fact, very contemporary. Now, it's very interesting looking at this, because we will see all of these garments, but that garment in particular was rather lost, I thought, in the photograph, where you can see the power. Is it just my imagination, or are we thinking Matador here?
Yeah, I think we are.
With that hat, yes.
Yes.
That to me looks more Lacroix than Schiaparelli.
That is quite Lacroix, yes. I don't think she was very fond of yellow. I don't think she used it very much. I don't think it was one of her
highlights,
colours.
maybe, but not for a whole.
Right. Yeah. Whereas it is very much one of his colours, and he uses it beautifully. Next.
It's very chic.
It's a good suit, isn't it?
Yes.
And with the square shoulders.
Yes. Beautiful.
That feels quite Lacroix as well.
Yes, it's the drawing that's so
Maybe,
Lacroix, really, in that case. Right, so now we're quite excited about that, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So let's have a look at the actual clothes. Pat, do you want to say anything particularly about this one?
Well, I think it's just quite difficult to read, isn't it?
It is difficult to read.
If it were on a body and walking in front of you, I think it would be easier.
Much easier, always.
But certainly the impression is of luxury, isn't it? And embroidery of the top quality, and fabrics.
Do you think it was a deliberate thing to do it as an exhibition? Because the last big Schiaparelli thing was the exhibition at the Met, the conversations between Prada and Schiaparelli. So the last time we saw Schiaparelli was in an exhibition, and then the reawakening, the first time we see how it's moving forward to the future is as an exhibition. Do you think that was a deliberate thing?
I have no idea. What do you think, Judith?
Well, I think Lacroix has a fondness for curating, and has curated and collaborated with Olivier Sayard, and he's very much sort of involved in that mode of presentation. So it's certainly something that I think he said when he was given this wonderful opportunity.
But as much as he does that, he does theatre and opera, so he can do the movement as well. I just wonder whether it was... Do you think from a historical point of view that you wanted to see all of the angles of it?
He's saying study this.
Yeah, study it more.
Wear this. Or
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. And I think the fact of the exhibition at the Met last year is a sort of valid continuity, isn't it? It's saying, and if that was drawing by virtue of being in dialogue with Prada, if Prada represents some sort of fundamental, sort of contemporary sort of zeitgeist, doesn't she always? It sort of stands in for something like that Schiaparelli has already been retrieved as sort of resonant with that. Certainly.
Possibly as art?
Yeah. Maybe.
And there's that connotation
Haute
as well,
Couture.
isn't there?
Do we know where this exhibition is being held?
It's at Les Arts Décoratifs.
For how long?
I think it's private.
Oh, is it? All right, just like a fashion show.
I think
in
it's
other
like a
words.
fashion show.
Invited
It's
guests.
in the little
Right.
pavilion room, but I think it's private. I mean, I don't
Okay.
even know whether it's open to clients or just to press.
Right. Okay, this looks to be very Schiaparelli in feel. It did in the drawing as well. And it looks very couture as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because it's couture without all the razzmatazz. It's a very elegant and memorable and very special garment that simply because of its understatement. This also, I think, is very interesting. It's this hot red, which was used a lot in the 30s, I think, yes. And of course, they were all madly in love with the bullfight then, weren't they?
Yeah.
Led by Cocteau and all, they were always going. People like Ava Gardner later in the 50s. It's
And
funny how
Lacroix
the
always,
bullfight- I'm sorry?
Lacroix always talks about
Absolutely.
being in the shadow of
Yeah.
the amphitheatre, doesn't
Yes,
it?
quite. This is virtually identical, except for scale, which I suppose means it's not identical. In thought, it's identical to the famous Yves Saint Laurent one that he did for Christian Dior and was filmed on Dovima with the elephants behind.
Oh yes.
Do you know?
Yes.
It's a thinner, it's a skinny latte version in a way, and to me lacks the drama that the original had because it was such a huge, fabulous flow of different colour.
But we are a skinny latte generation.
Well, I suppose we are. Yes, yes.
But Leon Bakst designed, you know, his sort of Orientalist collar, and Schiaparelli was interested in Orientalism
Yes,
and
he
those
was.
kinds of
Yes.
pointy, you know, the
Yes, yes.
you know
Chinese
shoulder.
toes, yes.
What I'm not sure what they're called, but I wonder whether it might refer to that because her father was an Orientalist, wasn't he?
Oh, I didn't know that, was he?
So I just wonder whether there's something about that, whether Lacroix is asking us to look for clues about her life.
Well, I mean, Christian Lacroix, along with Karl Lagerfeld, they're the only two designers or couturiers who have any cultural background at all now.
Yeah.
And obviously he feeds from all different periods, just as Yves Saint Laurent did. And I think that's a very interesting point that you've just made. And certainly she will have been interested and excited by the Ballet Russe, quite definitely.
That's beautiful under the sleeve, the double sleeve,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's-
And that emerald
love
green
that.
black is a very Schiaparelli
Yes.
combination, isn't it?
Yes.
I just think that ruffle there
Yeah.
is beautiful.
I'd love to see a detail of that
It's
embroidery.
such a pity
Yes.
we can't.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the embroidery as well.
I think
It's
most
clearly
of all we'd
harking
all
back
like
to
to
the
see it
circus.
move, but you can see the craftsmanship.
Oh yes, and I think actually that is probably why De La Valle decided to have a static
Static.
exhibition, because there are lots of people who have known fashion for a long time who find that couture is no longer couture at all, and mainly because the costs of any handwork are so high.
Yeah.
And I think he's just saying, well, this is the way it should be, this is the way it was, and this is the way we're going to make it again.
Yeah.
I would personally like him to have Lacroix doing it permanently, but I rather suspect that Lacroix is doing more interesting things. Last time I saw him, we had a long conversation. It was down in Arles, in fact, and it was great to talk to him there on a hot evening. And he was saying how thrilled he was with all the theatre stuff he was doing, the ballet and everything, in various countries. So he probably wouldn't go back to this because, after all, this is quite a treadmill, as we all know.
Has he gone back to Lesage? Do we know that for the embroidery, or is it? We don't know any details of that.
I would
I
have
would
thought
think
you
so,
have
yes.
to.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would almost certainly.
There are, as you say, there aren't many people who can do that.
But also he
No.
worked with them, didn't he?
Yes.
Lacroix.
This is a disappointing picture. I really cannot see anything on there.
I think this is meant to be the shocking one, but I think
Well,
we've got
yes.
a bad angle.
Yes.
We haven't got the pink, apart from in the gloves.
Except in the
Yeah.
gloves, yes.
Maybe I'm not.
Maybe when the next one will... Nope.
It's a very trim sort of silhouette. And when I think back to my aunts and everything, not that they ever dressed in Schiaparelli, let me tell you, they were always quite tightly torsoed in a way that fashion isn't now.
Yeah.
And we've got that feeling there.
I think this one is exquisite.
Looks
I
really
think
nice.
that's really beautiful.
Without the use of lycra.
Yeah.
It's cutting,
Exactly.
isn't it? It's cut rather than stretched.
It is.
Exactly,
I think it's
yes.
beautiful. I think it's an inspired choice to have Lacroix do it.
So do I. I really
think
would
he
like
was the right one.
I would
Yeah.
like him to do
Yeah.
a few more, because it's going to be a bit downhill, because how many free couturiers or free designers are who've actually worked in couture? I did wonder if he would give it to Jean-Paul Gaultier, because he is one of the very few left who did actually learn his trade at couture, you know.
But who's to say he couldn't do a collaboration?
Well, this idea of a collaboration, you know, I wanted to talk about it a bit more when we've seen them all.
I mean, I think although the photos are quite difficult to read, it's a bit like the Chanel staircase or the glass staircase, or how the fittings were done. At when you do couture fittings, you fit around a 360-degree mirror, so you could see all angles. And I think that's what he wants everybody to see, is they come round.
Yes, the whole problem, as we've all commented on, is the fact that you cannot judge a garment unless it's in a body moving.
Yeah.
And you've literally only seen half of it if you don't see them turn around and see what happens at the back. You know? That's the tad OTT for me.
I think that might be
That's
shocking.
That's shocking, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe.
The title of it.
Yes.
Oh, we've lost the titles of the... Oh, no,
Yes,
No,
on
they
the
were just on the
drawings.
drawings.
Drawings,
Yeah.
The thing is, though, if it just swooshes past, it could be fabulous.
Yes.
Well, it could liven up the red carpet, certainly. I'm sick of the clothes we see on the red carpet. You know, it's really cookie cutter now, and all you have to do is colour them in different colours, it seems to me. This is a great sort of homage to the skills of Paris, isn't it? Which people are now taking seriously since Lagerfeld bought all the little the petit main places, you know.
What is it shows? You know, he's dared to not make it too surrealist, hasn't he? He hasn't gone for the obvious
Shoe on the head or
sort of, you know.
Yeah.
And unlike Chanel, there isn't a sort of vocabulary of, you know, C's and a camellia, and you know, there isn't a sort of vocabulary in that sense, but there's something else. And I guess what they need to do now as a brand is establish what those signature elements might be, maybe.
Absolutely.
You know, that they're figuring them out.
For today. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, without
But interestingly, he did 99 sketches and it got pulled down to this 18.
Yeah.
So maybe there were like you know, and he...
more historical.
Is this in the same room?
No.
That looks somewhere else.
No,
doesn't
it's
it?
not.
This is back in the house.
I would guess. And suddenly it looks much more modern, doesn't it, now? And in a way, I suppose, less couture. That's the real problem with couture. You know, in the 20s and 30s and even earlier, and even up to the end of the 50s, as we all know sitting here, is women didn't just go to couture for big ball gowns. They went there to have beautifully cut suits, and pants, and ski wear, or whatever it happened to be, you know.
Yeah. Even your gloves.
Now, what?
Even your gloves.
Even your gloves, and your corsets and everything, absolutely. Now it seems to me that couture is a little sort of thing floating out there, and the body's sort of sunk away somehow. Is it my imagination, or would that jade be a very difficult colour for most women? It's a very bold colour.
Well, if
I
you're
think
going to be
it's
cynical, you'd say redhead would be fantastic, but also possibly Asian.
Yes.
It's an Asian sort of colour.
I went to see Pal Joey last night, and it was marvellous to see Rita Hayworth with her mass of red hair. She would have looked terrific in that. She really would.
And Schiaparelli did a lot of stripes, so the one we're looking at is very much...
Yes.
And presumably that corsage is an homage to a rosetta.
Yes. Which could be
Revolutionary
bullfight.
cockade.
Or
could
bullfight.
be. Or a bullfight, yes. Yeah.
You can almost picture the Bérard drawing of that,
Yes.
can't you?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
stripy.
Yes.
And that
One.
that huge bustle that we can just see peeking out.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that is a red carpet dress, isn't it? That one.
Yeah, I would say.
Well, you know, it's not so easy because they have to go and sit down in an ordinary theatre seat, and they're not very wide, you know. It's a bit of a problem, particularly for the poor little actor who's brought along to sort of...
Bring a small friend.
Yes, bring a very small friend, exactly, a very thin friend. Well, that's the last one. So, off you go, Pat. You started, so round us up.
I think there's some great things there. And I'd love to see the embroidery, the sort of bold stripes and shapes that he's used. But as you say, I think this is a beginning, and there's going to be more coming out of there, I think.
Now, if, as we are assuming at this point, if there's not going to be another Lacroix collection, seeing this, wanting some sort of continuity perhaps, who would you think should do the next collection?
I don't know that. I have no idea.
Chance your arm.
No, really I don't, because
Okay.
I'm not sure anybody's in the same sort of mindset as Schiaparelli.
I think they should.
But they should be.
Twist his arm.
Yeah.
Maybe
also
you think
I,
he's the right man, do you?
But also I'm a huge fan of Lacroix, and
yes, we all are.
and there were so many things that I sort of followed and loved of his from, you know, when I was at college. It was literally my sort of first review in the sort of, you know, university journal was, you know, when he hit the cover of Time magazine. You know, I'm very loyal to a loyal follower of his, and so I think they should, you know, twist his arm. And I think there are a huge number of sort of affinities, but I sort of know that he's gone on to do, you know, to do different things that are exhilarating. You know, it's not, but I think he could continue doing this.
I would love him to. I think he left couture very, very, very sad indeed.
Yeah.
And he's repositioned himself, and perhaps he wouldn't want to make
Go
himself
back.
vulnerable again, you know. But he certainly missed.
Oh no, so missed. I mean, he was such a
some of
highlight
the
of
most
it.
beautiful clothes
He
of
was-
the last 15 years have been from his drawing board.
Yeah.
What do you think? Who do you think, Camilla, would be a possible follow-up?
I mean, I love Christian, and I think that Lacroix was such an important part of couture. But I think that's the thing. There are wases, and you can be too reverential, and I don't think you should look back. You should look forward. And I think Christian's got a great life now, doing his operas and his collaborations, and I think to keep it fresh and inspiring for him, he dropped in and did this as his homage to Elsa. And I think it could be quite interesting to see different fashion designers. I mean, there are
Who springs to mind?
you know, but I was thinking.
Say it.
But I think that somebody like Christian Louboutin or Stephen Jones, or there could be quite interesting accessories collaborations or jewellery collaborations.
Yes.
I think that there are definitely couturiers like Gautier or Galliano that could do a sort of like a stage there. I think that you know, this idea of coming in and doing sort of an 18-piece homage, I don't know how it would work commercially, but I do think this is actually quite a commercial collection. I think that coat and the bustle, I think that there are pieces in it that you could definitely sort of reawaken Scap.
I really wonder if there's any commercial reason for this at all in Mr. Durnavale's mind. I think he will do a very sporty, very Italian 50s, 60s, maybe 70s look to go with his marvellous shoes, you know, and use this as a way of getting the name out there, you know.
John always said to me that, well, not just me, the way John Galliano explained couture was he said it was the eau de parfum, and then it filtered down, and he worked in a very sort of pyramidic thing, and I think that this is the eau de parfum, this is the undiluted new spirit, and then from that maybe it will just be an accessories or
the eau de toilette.
Or they'll relaunch Shocking.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he's got
It's only a matter of time, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, well, I just want to say that I have grave reservations about a fashion house starting off with this temporary idea, and I just wonder where we'll all be in 5 years' time if we've had 10 collections from 10 different hands. Will there be any feeling of Schiaparelli or Lacroix or whoever? Will there be any left? And
But you've got to start somewhere.
No, you've got to be a little tougher and say, yeah, this is the person I want, and we'll employ him, and if we don't like him, or if he doesn't like us, in 5 years he'll be gone. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think it's trivialising and making it really commercial in a way it shouldn't be. You know, any old designer will do sort of thing. Let's try.
I don't think it's like
X
that
and
at
then
all.
Y. Well, we don't know what's in his mind.
No, but I think it's.
I'm not happy with it. What do you feel?
Oh, I think it's quite brilliant. I think it's a really clever way of getting people reaccustomed with Scap. I think that the Met exhibition reawakened the interest in it.
Oh, I don't think so at all.
I do, because I don't think it sort of showed her characteristics and personality, and I imagine if it was Elsa, she'd see it like she was dating a whole series of lovers and she was working out who she was going to run away with, and so she's just having little affairs at the moment.
How I wish I could have your romantic view of life.
I was going to say that's a great
Do you want to
take
say
on that.
anything else?
Well, now, I mean, I
What do
can't
we
think
say?
of anything
How do
else.
we-
I
how
mean,
do
she
we
said
follow
how we
follow
can
that?
think of it, but no, I
Okay.
think it's.
Yeah, go
I
on.
think it's-
You have got something to say. Say it.
Well,
know
I think
you
all
do.
experiments are good in the sense
Yes.
that I have a sense that it is a different way of doing something, and I think people are accustomed now to the revival of labels, and and I think they're giving it a go to do that in a different way. That it is a homage, and it's drawing attention to the fact that that's what it is as well. Then, if it becomes something else, that I don't know how they'll take that. And in a way, I'm less interested in the commercial aspects. I prefer the romance of the homage.
Yes. Pat, how would you feel about selling something that was Schiaparelli done by a little lad who perhaps at this moment is slaving away in a rat-infested place somewhere around Hoxton?
Well, with my second sight, I'd have to choose the right boy, wouldn't I? But obviously a man like Lacroix and Schiaparelli, that's already a context that
that's two
makes it more than it is.
Yes.
On paper, as it were.
So in a few years' time, these will command a high price.
I would have thought so, yes, absolutely.
Particularly if it's the only one. It becomes a very special little collection.
They're already, you know, as you say, it's an homage, but it's already a new look at the historical side of the brand, as it were. So you're right, we're going to have to see where they go from
where
now.
they go, yes.
But it's the start of a conversation, I guess.
Well, I think full marks to Diego Della Valle for doing this and for saving the name and for, in fact, taking what is a bold approach. I'm half devil's advocate. I do see what you're saying,
And
Camilla,
full
but
marks
I'm
to
not
Christian
sure.
Lacroix for coming back.
Yes.
You see, I fear very much the role of journalists, particularly those on the other side of the Atlantic, perhaps, who will find some skinny little lad who's done it marvellously with T-shirts and say, what a good idea for him to take over, or her for that matter, to take over Schiaparelli. And it will be as disastrous.
Fantastic Schiaparelli.
So many of these mixed marriages, you know, we've taken these little orphans in so many houses. They don't even know how to pronounce couture. And the next moment they're on the top, the very top of the pyramid. And the results have been pretty dire in many cases. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for listening to us. We've enjoyed it. We've loved to see the clothes. go back onto Line or whatever it is and see the drawings more closely. And thank you very much indeed for what is undoubtedly our most erudite and informed panel that we've had ever, I think. Thank you so much for being what you are, and lovely as well. So gentle and nice, no rubs. Thank you.